Hello, this is Andrew and welcome. This is going to be the first part of a two-part series on investing in real estate and the forms of financial investments that you can make, at least with me in my investments. So the first one is a private loan, and the second one would be an actual partnership in a project. So what we're going to go over today is a private loan, and within a private loan we've got two different streams that we can offer. And excuse my chicken scratch, but these notes are trying to keep me on track so I can explain it simply and effectively to you, hopefully. So the first option that we have is private lending for cash. Now, this is just a loan to my business, and this loan is not registered to the property. It is based on a promissory note between you, the lender, and me, the borrower. It's primarily used, well, I should say exclusively used for investment purposes. Now that could be financing a down payment of a property if I have funds from somewhere else and I just need the down payment, or it could be the entire purchase price of the property if we're doing a flipper or something of that nature, where it's better to just buy it in cash and then sell it without getting the banks involved because they don't like short-term loans. Or it could be funding renovations on a project. In any case, this is a simple interest-only loan that I pay you every month. So this money is constantly moving because if I'm not using it for investment purposes, I'm paying you regardless of how the money is being used. So it's in my best interest to keep it moving. So like I said, it's an interest-only loan, which means the principal stays the principal. So for argument's sake, $100,000, I'm going to pay you $1,000 a month, let's just say, for round numbers, and the $100,000 stays put. This isn't a reduction loan like an interest plus principal, like a typical mortgage, which we'll get to over here. So for as long as I'm using the money, you're getting that payment of $1,000. Now the sources that you can use to fund this type of an arrangement are, one of the best is a HELOC. That's a home equity credit line. Now if you don't know what that is, you'd talk to your bank or your borrower. You might be able to convert your current mortgage into a readvanceable mortgage, where as you pay it down, it turns into a credit line. Or you might be able to just get a credit line on top of that, where they kind of appraise your house, see what it's worth. And if you have equity in your home, they'll give you a certain percentage of that as a loan. These tend to be pretty low interest, so that is key. And because you are borrowing from the bank to then loan it to me. Now, that sounds crazy, but the banks do that that's where they get their money. They don't actually have the money. You look that up. It's interesting. So when we pay interest back to you, we will make arrangements, like between you and I, we can make any sort of terms or like length, rates, etc. Like this arrangement is entirely discussed, and there's no rules to it. So whatever works for you works for me, and we come to an agreement. So obviously I would be paying you more interest than the bank is charging you to loan that money to yourself. In this case, you'd have to get that set up if you don't already have one. I would walk you through that process. I can provide brokers that can do it for you, give you leads. We'll work through the whole thing together. Cash is always key, or is always king. If you happen to be a really good saver, you might have a big stockpile of money. Hopefully you don't, just in a savings account. That would not be earning you much interest. But if you had cash, you could add that, or it could be a combination. And stocks and other types of investments, if they're not doing very well, say for right now they're not doing very well, you might want to just turn them in, cash them out, and use that funds. Because if I give you a percentage that you can determine is much better than what you're making here, you may choose that it's better to cut loose of that and invest privately in my company. So going over the process here, this is a very simple one. Basically, we just have a conversation. We talk about what your needs are, what my needs are, and we come to an arrangement based on the interest rate that you're going to require, and terms like how long you're comfortable loaning. In the beginning, you might only just want to do it for 6 months. Typically, a year is an average time frame, and then you can always re-up each additional year, because you probably will like getting that $1,000 a month every month consistently, and you'll be hooked to that. So we draw up a contract. This is a promissory note. It's a legally binding contract, just has all the terms on it. You don't really need to get lawyers involved. It's not that type of thing. It's literally, we can write it up ourselves. You're familiar with an IOU, you could literally say, Andrew owes me this much money at the end of this term, and along the way he'll pay me $1,000 a month for use of that money. That is a legally binding contract in Canada, so if you're not, we'll make it all professional, of course. Then you'll have to make the funds available. So if you didn't have a HELOC, you'd have to get that set up. If you were to cash in investments, you would have to obviously put a sell order in, and that transaction takes some time. Once that goes through, you transfer the funds. It could be in the form of a bank draft or a wire transfer, or there's many different forms, whatever works for you. And then, pardon me, then I pay you interest. Simple as that. So really, this is kind of all could be done in one step. I'll draw up the paperwork, you just sign it. You'd have to do legwork on there, but if you didn't know on making the funds available, but if you weren't sure how to do that, I can certainly talk you through the process, who to call and what to do. Transfer funds, easy, go to the bank and do that. And then I pay you probably an e-transfer, or ideally you can set up some sort of an automatic payment process. So having said that, there is the other option here, which is a little more formal, and it does involve lawyers. It is loaning the private funds as a mortgage. Now this is specifically on a property itself. So this is tied to a property that I go out and I find a deal that I feel is a flip opportunity or something of that nature, and I get you to provide a mortgage on that specific property. So some of the details of this is, like I said, it's on a specific property. You are tied to that property, or I should say your funds are tied to that property. It is the mortgage is registered on title of that property. I could not sell that property if I wanted to without paying off the loan. One problem with the mortgage aspect is if you did like the private lending atmosphere, every time I buy and sell a property, the process would start and stop. So we have to get the lawyers involved. They would sell the property, give you the money back. Then I find another property, then get the lawyers involved, you give them the money, and they give it to me, buy the property. So now that goes back and forth, back and forth. So it could be months. It more likely could be 3 months in between projects. So as an investment, you're losing 3 months worth of income with this method. The interest rates are more or less going to be the same anyway. So again, the sources for this are the same as this. The only exception is that you can use RSPs or any other registered fund to fund a mortgage. In Canada, an RSP is a legal entity aside from yourself that doesn't have to pay taxes essentially. So it can legally invest in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, gold, silver, all that sort of stuff that you might be familiar with, but it can also invest in a legally registered mortgage. So if you wanted to do RSPs, keep in mind that the money from the RSP then goes back into the RSP. And I don't just mean the principal amount. I mean, all of the interest payments go into the RSP. So this money is not very liquid that you can use to buy consumer goods or pay off loans or anything like that. It all goes back into the RSP. This is all facilitated, it's important to note, this is all facilitated by a trust company, which acts as a holding company, a third party, and the money flows through them. So it's all the transaction is all very legal. It's not a complicated process, it's just another step that has to be done. If you want to look up Olympia Trust, they provide this service, and it's actually pretty simple. It just requires some paperwork to be signed, and your money has to be converted from whatever RSP you have it in. Like if it's at a bank or maybe you have self-directed, you would have to convert it to their trust company, and it does have to be self-directed in their end. So the process here again is more or less the same, but there's a few differences. Still, we're going to discuss the terms one-on-one. We can make whatever terms we want. In this scenario, especially if you're using RSPs, there are legal limitations to providing mortgages. The interest rates that are given, can't be below a certain threshold, which is essentially basically the bank's lowest interest rate. And it can't be higher than something like 60% or something like that. So obviously that's not going to be an issue. So we come up with the terms, come up with the length. You're probably not going to provide a 5-year mortgage like a bank would, but perhaps a 1-year mortgage. It's pretty common. I draw up the term sheet. This basically is like this agreement that we would make over here, but with all the terms, the lengths, and any other caveats that we want to add in there, penalties, whatever. But this term sheet is then given to the lawyers. So the lawyers have something to work off of to say this is what we've agreed on. So they do the mortgage paperwork up based on the percent, the interest rate percentage that we agree on, that the length of the term that we agree on, and some other details as well. So we draw that up. You make arrangements to transfer the funds. They have to be ready because in this case they're going to go to the lawyer. Lawyer does all the paperwork. We both have to sign. In this case, you're likely going to have your lawyer, my lawyer, and then the seller's lawyer if it's tied to the property. So the lawyer will take your money and basically it goes kind of through me to the seller, and it registers against a mortgage on the title of the property. It's in my name. And then, and then at that point, I just pay interest to you in the form of mortgage. Now, in a mortgage scenario, depending on how long it is, you may have we may agree on an interest plus principal scenario if it was a longer term. If it was a short term, say 1 year, it might just be interest only. But if you did agree to, say, like a 4% interest loan for 5 years, because you like that idea, then we would build in an interest payment to that. And that's just a security thing, because carrying a principal balance without paying it down for that long is just, it's not a good idea for you or me. So that pretty much sums it all up. That again is 2 cash options to fund, where you're not really involved in the property at all. You're just loaning me operational money. This is purely operational, where I decide where the money goes and how it's used, and I just pay you the interest, and you just, we have literally nothing to worry about. In this one, it's mortgaged on title. There is going to be a little bit of signing paperwork back and forth, having to show, IDs and things like that. So it's a little bit more involved, a little more paperwork, but it's very, very above board. You're registered on title. It's extremely safe. If for some reason something happened, you essentially own that house, just like the bank would. So I hope that was clear enough. Can be a little bit of a complicated subject. Not many people are familiar with this. I certainly wasn't a few years ago. So if you got some value out of this, I appreciate if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe and give it a thumbs up. And if you're a potential partner, then I hope this was educational and explains the process. And if you want to give me a call or email me, that would be great, and we can chat in further detail. Okay, take care. Thanks.